Brandon, come on down to the Price is Right. Come on down to the Price is Right. This is what they say Brandon got going on over in Chicago, y'all.
Far left Mayor Brandon Johnson facing calls to resign. It comes after the city's public schools CEO was
Who didn't
fired
ask him to
Friday after
resign?
he refused to take out a $300 million loan for a new teachers union contract. That is the same union that once employed Mayor Johnson. One op-ed arguing it is time for Johnson to resign, saying this, quote, "You have demonstrated you are not a mayor for all of Chicago, but only for your friends at the Chicago Teachers Union. You are willing to use your power to benefit those closest to you while using the children you say you care about as political cover for your disastrous decision making." Our next guest says this loan was all about Johnson's push to help illegal migrants, already costing his own taxpayers more than $500 million. That's with a B, billion dollars.
So Brandon Johnson, right after they pushed this vote through, and see, it makes me wonder, what exactly are they looking to do? What exactly what this budget was all about? One of the things that Chicago Red and Chicago Phillips Red has been saying since the beginning of time is one of the reasons why we're trying to push these tax raises and these egregious budget through over in Chicago, which they narrowly did. One of the reasons that they're trying to push this through is because they've been funding a migrant crisis. They've been funding a migrant crisis over in New York. They're not doing this because they're doing it for the people. They're doing this because they need extra funding for the migrant crisis. So this is the estimated cost of what they've already spent on the migrant crisis. From August 2022 through October of 2024. In 2 years, they've spent almost 300 estimated. Let me say that again. Estimated to have spent almost $300 million per year. I will tell you that that number is categorically false. It is 100% false. It is 100% off. They've spent significantly more money. And not only have they spent significantly more money, we're not even accounting for the things that you pay for every single day that they have access to that should be categorized as migrant spending. When you go to work every day, right? And for those of y'all that work in tech or you work in corporate America and you have budgets, and most of the time, even if you are a salaried employee, you still have to fill out timesheets. The reason that you got to fill out timesheets is because the company has to figure out how much money that they're putting aside for your department. When they're doing their yearly budget, we're going to go over it inside of the Patreon and we're going to tie this back to your own personal finances. So make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. They allocate a certain amount of money for the budget. The only way that they're able to do that is by going through and seeing what is being billed to the company. So if you have 10 workers, let's just give a round number, making $200,000 a year each, then that means that those 10 workers tend to cost $2 million a year. Now, the company got to go through and they got to evaluate, hey, okay, is this department actually in value add? Do we need them? Do they need that much of a budget? Do they have any contractors outside of regular everyday employees? What projects do they have going on? So on and so forth. And then they break down the budget based off a project. They break down the budget based off of how much they think that they're going to bring in revenue. And then that's how they determine what department is valuable, who needs to be laid off, if they then go through a law or where they need to have, a boosting and hiring more people. They can figure out, okay, listen, if this is costing me $2-3 million a year in resources, then why wouldn't we then just hire an outside contractor to do it for $1.5 million? Ah, ah. So you wonder why it's so much easier to get a contract as a consultant or a person that's coming in to pitch a product. In their mind, well, listen, we can have people that's in here that's costing us $3 million a year for whatever it takes. And then you got to get equipment and HR and all of this stuff. And then she talking about he busting them down for a real one. We ain't got to worry about that. We bring in outside contractors that's not employees of the company, pay them a one-time fee. They're going to come in, they're going to pitch the project. They're going to say, hey, listen, we can do this project for $1.5 million. One thing that I learned in corporate America is that the budgets are crazy. Why? Because they're not looking at the value add. They're looking at how much money they're saving by contracting it out. They might not even save any money because it might do cost overruns. There's a lot of other factors that go into it. They're looking at, well, listen, we could save us $1.5 million if we just hire out an independent contractor instead of paying them $3 million a year for a 2-year project. That's probably gonna have cost overruns and cost us $7.5 million. So then when I come in and I say, okay, well, listen, this is what y'all want, this is what it's gonna cost us, this is how many people I need for this job, this is how many people I need to actually work with you guys. I never undercut myself. Because first of all, you're gonna go in talking about, yeah, man, give me $300,000 to be able to do this job because that sounds like a lot of money for you, and you're gonna lose your shirt. That's A. B, you're undercutting yourself. C, you're overworking, and D, you're not really adding as much value. And the minute that they say, oh, you only want $300,000, you get crossed out anyway because you're too cheap, and we don't think that you can really do the job because you don't even know how to price yourself correctly. This goes back specifically into the conversation about Brandon Johnson. Well, why? Because what I'm trying to tell you guys and what I'm explaining to you guys from a C student's perspective is that when Brandon Johnson and the Chicago officials say that they only spent $574 million on migrants, double it. Double it. Because that is just taxpayer monies that they took out for contracting services. That does not also include the billing that goes into police services and school budgets and class overruns and infrastructure updates and trash and sanitation. That does not include judges and crime and jailing and all of these different things that is not being accounted for. That does not include all of the different things that is not truly being accounted for that you as taxpayers are still paying for. So when they say that we're going to have a $942 million budget deficit come 2025, now you see how budgets work. Now you understand it a little bit differently. Don't worry, don't worry. We got a more extensive expert class coming up in the Patreon this week during the live stream. Make sure y'all tab into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. That's just a round number that they can give y'all, to say, oh man, this is what we spent. Double it. Double it. Over $1 billion over the last 2 years, at least, I believe, is being spent on the migrant crisis in Chicago. And they're gonna raise your property taxes, or they're gonna charge you all a bag tax, or streaming tax, or this tax, or liquor tax, or this tax, tax. Just taxing y'all to death.
Chicago resident Kata Truss joins us now with more. Kata, good morning. What a non-Christmas gift for the CEO, Pedro Martinez. What happened here?
Good morning. Basically, what happened is our mayor has decided that he wanted CEO Pedro Martinez to leave. They asked him to resign when he refused to secure the $300 million loan that the city wanted him to incur. That would have put the city basically in a junk bond status and lowered the city's credit rating.
Let's stop there for a second. Let's break this down. Let me tell you why he's the worst mayor in Chicago. So, what's being alleged is that he fired the person that was over the schools. Why did he fire the person that was over the schools? Because they were demanding that he take out a $300 million loan. Why was he asking them to take out a $300 million loan? They're alleging that they were using that monies to continue to fill budget gaps as well as support the migrant crisis, ongoing support of the migrant crisis that you guys are absolutely saying that you're against. What does that also do? That lowers your credit rating as a city. Yes, credit rating as a city is a thing. So when you think of these legislators that say, oh man, we want to give back to the American people. Oh man, we're going to fund schools. Or these people that are running for the mayor's office or as aldermen, and they promising you all of this, they don't even understand how government works. They don't even understand how their own finances work. So what it does is it brings it into junk bond status. You know what junk bond status is as a city? It means that you're a subprime borrower. The same way that you're a subprime borrower when you go to the dealership and you say, hey man, I want that Charger Hellcat, red eye, demon time. You know what they say? All right, cool. So I got this 28% interest loan for you, buddy. And when you pay this over the next 10 years, the first 7 of them, you're not even going to be pulling into the principal. You're going to be paying interest. So it costs taxpayers. It costs taxpayers more money to borrow money, in which you guys shouldn't be borrowing money. You should be lowering costs and going back to pre-pandemic spending. The city of Chicago, it's going to cost you more to service the debt on loans that you already own. Why? Because the city of Chicago is now going into junk bond status because Brandon Johnson is borrowing his way to plugging budget deficits, as well as what's being alleged is supporting a migrant crisis. You guys are basically on a pathway into an alcohol river, and nobody is going to come save you. You are on a path to bankruptcy, and it is going to cost you more money. And it is going to be very bad. Why? Because we went through it here in Detroit. We went through it already. Our credit rating actually went up over the last year. We actually had a population increase over the last year. We are booming. I'm looking at these cranes. I'm looking at the buildings. I'm looking at the population increase. People are coming to the city. They're investing in it. I seen a couple people from Chicago over the weekend. I kicked it with. They said they're moving here. You are driving the city through incompetent leadership from a social studies teacher into bankruptcy, and the people are the ones that's going to pay for it. How much more can you guys take? How much more can you guys take? And now he bullying because they saying that he the one that told them to fire him because he wouldn't take out a $300 million loan. How much more can you guys take? Crazy.
And Pedro refused to adhere to that. Also, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about, prior to our new elected school board being appointed, all of the board members resigned because when the mayor asked them to fire Pedro Martinez initially, they refused, citing that there was no real reason to fire him and the fact that they agreed with him not taking out the
Let's
loan.
hear this woman cook.
And
Hold on, we
so,
gotta hear her
we
cook.
have our mayor who went to our state senator to maneuver the laws that took place that got our elected school board so that the Chicago Teachers Union could have control and of how those people were elected, and also giving the mayor more control, or CTU, because they're one and the same, when the appointments for the Chicago new elected board were appointed. And so as you see, initially, all of the members were supposed to be elected. And Mayor Johnson went to our state senator, I guess head in hand, and asked him to do things a little differently and to change how the members were going to be appointed, as well as how they were elected. I think that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that they asked these parents and regular community members to come up with 1,000 signatures in order to get on the ballot. Now, keep in mind that we have congressmen and state senators who don't have to have more than 300 signatures to get on the ballot. So to ask a parent to come up with that kind of signatures was already setting parents up to fail, putting him in a position to appoint the people that he wanted to appoint, which is why we have now our CEO of the Chicago Public Schools now being fired.
Ekata, let's take a look and remind our.
So Brandon Johnson basically tried to strong arm the people of Chicago. And first of all, he finessed y'all because he never talked about this in the city council meetings. He never talked about this with the aldermen. He never talked about this with Chicago Flips Red. He never talked about this with Chicago Red. So basically what he's telling you, or what they're telling you, is that Brandon Johnson tried to strong arm a dude into, this is what they're alleging. He tried to strong arm the dude into taking out a $300 million loan against the city. He refused, and that's one of the reasons that he got fired.
Our viewers about Mayor Johnson's record, a $982 million budget deficit, and proposing this $300 million property.
And he ain't even been in office that long.
Tax hike, spent $527 million on new migrant arrivals, ended Chicago's ShotSpotter gunshot detection tech, despite a 33-14 alderman vote in favor of saving it. Kata, what is the future now? What comes next with Pedro Martinez, this CEO? Because it appears he was fired, quote, without cause, and now has
Well,
some
he gonna sue
legal
the city,
standing perhaps to challenge it.
and it's gonna cost taxpayers more money.
Well, of course, I'm sure that he is going to challenge it. I'm sure that he is going to probably sue the city of Chicago,
Yep,
which means that the city is going to be find
cost more
itself
money.
in deeper financial debt. And it's
Yep,
just a travesty. Let me just
so
say
dumb.
that as mayor, any mayor who comes in has a right to appoint the person that they want. That's not what happened here with Pedro Martinez. Pedro Martinez basically lost his job because he refused to do something that would have been bad for the city.
So now, guess what happens? Let me tell you how bad. I'm gonna keep saying this. Let me tell you how bad Brandon Johnson is. Now it's even worse. You know why it's worse? Because it's gonna cost the taxpayers even more money. Because now he's gonna sue. It's gonna be more legal fees. It's gonna be more confusion. Cost more money. The lawyers are gonna get richer, and he probably gonna be able to get a payout because if he was fired without just cause because he was trying to do the thing that's best for the city and for the school system, he'll probably be paid out. And you still gonna have to fire. You're gonna have to hire somebody else to take his place at a much greater rate. Jesus Christ. How do y'all do? How do y'all justify this? How do y'all justify y'all taxpayer dollars being used so wild?